Hi guys, it's Lisa, and today I want to talk a little bit about one of the main motivators for me starting this YouTube channel, and that is my PhD project, or that's what I've called it at least. So I would like to obtain a PhD position in the field of history of science. Now this is a relatively new field, and I don't exactly have history of sciences master's degree, so it's gonna take a little bit of work. So I have actually finished my bachelor's and my master's, which means that I don't have a lot of opportunities to work on my academic CV anymore. And that's what this project is all about, is I want to actually get some stuff published, and I want to work on my research skills a little bit more, but I want to do this outside of university. So that's what this whole project is about. Let me give you a little bit of background on my actual academic background. So I have a bachelor's in religious studies and a master's in archaeology. And that's not exactly a common combination, especially for someone who then wants to go into the field of history of science. So the reason I did a bachelor's in religious studies is because I was really interested in the way that people view the world and people view each other. And religious studies was just something that I felt like I didn't know enough about. It's one of the main motivators in society as a whole. And that really interested me. But I realized the more I studied that I was actually more interested in the history of religion and the way it has shaped our society over the ages. And one of the things within that field that interested me so much was actually the combination between religion and science, and the way that religion has motivated science and was basically the cause for science to exist in the first place, researching the creation of God. And that's kind of what stuck with me. So over the course of my degree, I tried to learn more and more about historic research, about archives, and kind of find my way in there. And then I realized that I wanted to know every single way of understanding the history of our world and of society in it. So then I actually transitioned a little bit into archaeology and museum studies, and the way we can read objects and objects have importance for us. And at that point I actually got interested in heritage as well, and the way that we have now constructed a past for ourselves that we can never truly know, but these objects have meaning to us. And I wanted to understand why. And so my plan was to get a dual master's in archaeology and museum studies, and through some personal circumstances that never really happened, but I did get my master's in archaeology. And while I was doing that, I got interested in the history of museums, the history of universities, this giant history of collecting that us humans have, and that I wanted to know more about, and that basically transitioned into an interest, a passion for a history of knowledge of our world. So in the beginning I did that through knowledge of our world spiritually, or like the religious side of that. And then as I transitioned into my master's, I went into the history of our world as seen through objects, as we've tried to understand through science, because collections are basically one of the main ways that we understand our natural world, and that interested me so much. But as you can maybe understand, with a bachelor's in religious studies and a master's in archaeology, no one is really going to let you research natural history collections, for example, even though I feel like that's kind of where my interests lie at the moment. And I'm not gonna do another master's. I don't have the money. I'm not gonna be able to kind of reschool myself, but I feel like with my background in social history of science, of religion, of objects and museum history, I feel very well suited to actually do this research. It's just that it's not in my degree title. So I have to do a little bit of work to get a step ahead. Now you might think that that's kind of a lost cause, like you don't have the degree, how are you supposed to get a PhD position in that field? Luckily that's not entirely true, so the last few months I actually applied to a couple of PhD positions, and I thought it was really interesting how that kind of went, because the first PhD position I applied to was actually because the first PhD position I applied to was actually a history of heritage, if that makes sense. So they wanted to know what people in the 19th century thought of Roman heritage, of Roman archaeology. And that seemed like the perfect thing to me, because I did Roman archaeology during my master's, and that whole archival study that they were looking for, that's something I really dove into during my bachelor. So I felt like this was a perfect combination for me. I wasn't actually looking for a PhD position straight away after university, but then I saw this one. I just fell in love with it. It sounded so amazing, because it was archival research into the history of archaeology. And that's actually something that I did during my thesis, is I researched the history of museums and of archaeology, and the way archaeological museums deal with nature in their collections. And I felt like this was perfectly well suited for my thesis, for my history, for my skills. So I applied to this position, and it was part of a bigger project into Roman heritage here in the Netherlands. And so I got an email back that unfortunately I was not on the shortlist for this position. And I was very sad about that, honestly. And then a week later, they sent me another email saying, unfortunately, you were not on the short list, but we'll put you on the long list. Maybe we'll contact you again. But we have 2 more PhD positions in Roman archaeology, and we feel like that might be well suited for your master's. Maybe you'd like to apply to those. And I thought, well, this whole research project is incredibly interesting. I do really want to do a PhD at some point. So they actually asked for a research proposal. So I wrote a research proposal about Roman religion, kind of mixing that with what I did in my bachelor's. And I applied to those. And actually for both of those, I got a call back straight away. I was on the shortlist. They wanted to speak with me. And while I was talking about them, about this very technical archaeological study, I realized that this is not what I want to do. But weirdly enough, I guess it makes sense, but they thought that I was incredibly well suited for this thing that I felt way over my head about. Because this was a technical archaeological study where they needed me to analyze finds and find patterns. They had a whole program, GIS, Geographic Information Systems, in which they wanted to map all these finds. This was something I'd never really done before. And just, I guess, the title of my master's, and also the fact that I did know someone on the committee there who I've worked with during my master's, that kind of combination made them pick me on the shortlist for this PhD, even though I felt like this was something I was not well suited for. And I did say that at the end of the first meeting, actually, for the first PhD, I backed out of this project because I felt like this was not something I was well suited for. And then a couple of weeks later, I got the notion that the other PhD position, the one that I had originally applied to, was filled, without them ever speaking to me about it. So I realized that there was this disconnect between what I thought I was good at and what I wanted to do, and what my paper, what my degree, what my apparently CV says that I'm good at, and what I wanted to do. And that might be a fault on my part, and though technically I did, as you always do, kind of make my CV look the best for the different positions. But I realized that if I wanted to get this PhD position in a history of science, a history of archaeology, a history of heritage position, then I had to make some changes, because my particular CV, my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, was not what they were looking for. So I figured I'd keep trying, of course. And I actually found another PhD position that was amazing, that didn't necessarily fit with something I'd done before, but I felt like it fitted very well with my interests and my skills again. So I applied to this one as well, and this one was actually collection research. So they had an anatomical collection of fetuses and embryos, and they wanted to know more about the collection history. So who was involved making this collection? What kind of position were the mothers in? Who were the doctors and the nurses and the midwives kind of connected to this collection process? And what role played religion in this time? Because this collection was made during the late 1900s, early 20th century. And religion was a huge part of the Netherlands in that time. There was a separation of the different religions, and they each had their own kind of world that they lived in. So this must have played a big part in this collection. So with my background in religious studies, especially the religious history of the Netherlands, and my kind of experience with collection research during my archaeology degree, I thought this was perfect. And actually they thought so too. They really liked me for this position. I got invited, we had a good talk, and I thought things were going very well, and they even said that things were going very well. So I did not get this position, and the only reason I did not get this position is because there was another candidate who had just done a master's thesis on this exact subject, basically. And so I didn't get it, but they did consider me for it. So this felt perfect for me, and I was devastated when I realized that I could not do this position at this moment. But it also motivated me to start this PhD project and to work on my specific CV, to have those kind of research topics and to have these publications on my name that are exactly fitted to what I want to do in a PhD. Because that's the reason that this other person got this position, is because they'd already done a study that was perfectly fitted to what they wanted to do with this PhD research. So this is what I also want to accomplish during this PhD project of mine. So in a year time approximately, usually PhD positions open up from September onwards, or they start from September onwards, and the application opens up a couple of months before that. So in the coming year, I want to work on my academic CV to specifically include these topics that I want to study, to specifically include this history of science, to include this tension between religion and science in the 19th century, to specifically include themes of nature and culture and how these kind of fight with each other, and these kind of things that I really want to do. And that's why I'm starting the PhD project, is to make sure that when I try again next time, in about a year, that I have that leg up that I did not have when I tried this time. And so I think that I have found a couple of strengths in my degree so far that I can really work on, and that I can kind of expand upon with this specific topic in mind. So that's what I'm doing here, and that's one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel, is to make sure I went through with it, because I kind of need this motivational pull in this way that I can tell myself, you have to make progress in this, you have to actively work on this in order to get this right. And one of the ways I can actively work on this is if I have to check up with the internet from time to time, and that's the main reason I started this YouTube channel. And because I cannot make a video every week about this PhD project, I decided to also include my other love, which is books. And I think these topics actually are very well suited together, because what I love in heritage and what I love is the way that we use these stories of the past for the present, or the way that the present influences these stories of the past. So to me, it is all about stories, and it's all about the way our identity is shaped by them. And of course, one of the ways that stories shape our identities is through books. And not only kind of academic books, things that you can learn something about, but mainly fiction. Because we get to see the world from someone else's perspective, and maybe the perspective of the past, or the perspective that we right now have on the past. So I think it's not that weird that I've combined this academic search of mine, this PhD project, with a channel on books and booktube in general. So I hope you're interested in follow me on this journey to get a PhD position, hopefully by this time next year, and to kind of, if you have the same problem that there is a PhD position that you really want, but based on your degree, for example, people are not really considering you, then maybe this will be helpful. I hope this will be helpful to anyone kind of in a similar position to mine. Or just in general, if you kind of want to know how to bump up your CV a little bit for an academic position and maybe get something published in the academic journals, then hopefully this kind of PhD project will be helpful for you as well. So I will update everyone on my progress and on the things that I found helpful and unhelpful along the way. And I hope that someone else has some kind of value in these videos as well. So for the next step in this PhD project, I want to actually share with you the steps that I'm gonna take in order to bump up my CV. So there's a couple of plans that I have that I will outline in that video. And also update you a little bit about how they're going, because I've started several of them already. So I hope to see you in the next video, whether that's going to be booktube or more PhD projects, we'll see. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye!